Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head back to Europe and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a few different styles, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're probably best known for their New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but in recent times they have been doing a number of these kind of big, juicy, fruity, smoothie type sour beers, and they're fairly well known to do a very nice kind of sweeter imperial stout as well, actually. So yeah, this is a brewery that I am quite familiar with, one that I really quite enjoy, but I just wish I'd gotten to review their beers a little bit more frequently. The simple fact is I didn't come across them all that often. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is from a style family that I have had from this brewery a few times before. It's one that I know these guys can do very well. This particular example is significantly stronger than ones that I've tried from them previously though in this family, but I have heard very good things about it, and it is one of their latest releases over here in Hong Kong. And this brewery does make it quite regularly to Hong Kong, in fact. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Latvia in the Baltics. We're going to go to Riga, the capital, and go a little bit to the northeast of the city to Eimuri, which means we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Ārpus Brewing Company. Now, this particular beer is called Quadruple Dry Hopped QDH Galaxy Nelson Mosaic Cryo TIPA, and I think that tells you everything you need to know about the style of this beer. So, comes in at 9.5% ABV, New England Hazy, Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, I have had some paleos, single IPAs, maybe one or two double IPAs from this brewery in the past. I can't remember how many I've actually reviewed on the channel right enough, but yeah, this one kind of caught my eye because it was a little bit stronger, and it was the same price as the singles and the doubles, to be honest with you, so it was a little bit of a bang for buck purchase in all honesty. But yeah, this is yet another beer that I picked up at Gur Beer in the One Mall in Shimsha. They've always got a good selection of different beers from across the world, and yeah, they had a bunch of Arpus come in today, so I went and picked this one up and thought I would make a video for it because we haven't tried a triple IPA from these guys before, so hopefully it's as good as I remember the other IPAs from this brewery being. But let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. Definitely nice to return to Arpus for the first time in at least 6 months. I honestly can't remember. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Ārpus Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Latvian playlist, which is being added to whenever we get the opportunity. And yeah, do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there's some really interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then and tell you a wee bit about Ārpus Brewing Company once again. So as I've mentioned to you already, Ārpus Brewing Company are from Riga, from the Riga area, the Latvian capital, and the company was founded back in 2017 by two homebrewers. This is Jirs Tihomirovs and Vladimir Berezins, and I do apologise in advance for any bad Latvian pronunciations. It's a language that I am just not familiar with in the slightest. But these guys started off as a gypsy brewery, but they were based primarily in Riga, and in the first year they brewed at 4 different breweries around the country, which they say helped them really understand a lot about using different brewing equipment, and it also helped them select their own stuff when they decided to found their own premises. But fast forward to 2019, They received funding from the Latvian Investment and Development Agency and also from the EU Agricultural Fund for Rural Development, and they invested about €200,000 in their own brewery in Eimuri in the Ādāži region, which is to the northeast of Riga. But the new brewery helped them increase their output dramatically, and they apparently export around 90% of their output. But this is quite common, of course, in the Baltic states, because, you know, Estonia is only about 1.3 million people, Latvia is about 2 if I remember correctly, and I think Lithuania is about 3 point something actually. So a number of the breweries in the Baltic states will export the vast majority of their beers, and it seems to be quite a successful business model for them. So yeah, you can get some very good beer from the Baltic states these days, so do give it a go. But yeah, this brewery are operating a 2,000 litre brew kit. They've got several 2,000 and 4,000 litre fermenters, and they have been just gradually scaling up the fermentation capacity of the brewery over the last few years. As I mentioned earlier, this brewery are most definitely best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPAs. They have been doing a number of the kind of fruity, juicy smoothie sours in recent times, and they have been producing quite a few of the kind of sweeter, big imperial stouts as well, which in my experience are very, very good. So if those are the styles you enjoy, this is one of the breweries that you definitely want to check out. But as of March 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 80 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more, to be honest, because I feel like I've seen most of those actually come through web shops and things like that. But yeah, a very well respected brewery, and one of the first Latvian breweries to get their name out there a little bit more over the European continent. But the name Arpus apparently comes from a Latvian word that means outside of the box. So I guess, you know, these guys are introducing unusual beer to the Latvians. So yeah, why not Arpus? And that's why their symbol that you'll see on all the cans is a box. So yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about the brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So this can is, I want to say this is a 440 milliliter can, which is kind of standard measurement in Europe. There you can see the Arpus box on the front of the label. I'll just let the camera focus on that, because the camera always focuses on faces, right enough. But you can see plain silver top on the can there, which looks very nice. And as we said earlier, this guy comes in at 9.5% ABV, and it's hopped with Galaxy, Nelson and Mosaic, and the Mosaic seems to be the cryo version. So we know all of these hops quite well. We've got Australia represented by Galaxy, New Zealand by Nelson Sauvin, and America by Mosaic. Galaxy comes in about 14% alpha acid. It's going to give you a really strong kind of grapefruity, passion fruity, and quite often like sort of pineapple-y, mango-y type character in my experience. Nelson Sauvin is the classic New Zealand, kind of the classic New Zealand high alpha acid hop. Lovely big sort of gooseberry, white, green, grapey type flavours from it. Absolutely love Nelson Sauvin, and Mosaic is one of your now classic American hops, big sort of tangerine, orangey type characters. But yeah, like I say, this one comes in at 9.5% ABV, a triple New England IPA. For me, a triple usually starts at 10% ABV, but you know, we can let them away at 9.5. That's not really a big deal for me. But yeah, I would always say that, you know, regular IPAs will start about 6 or so, then yeah, double IPAs about 8, and then yeah, triples 10 and quadruples about 12. But yeah, there's not really any kind of concrete rule about that. But yeah, this is the strongest IPA I believe that I've ever tried from Arpus, so I think we can get this guy out into the glass and just see what it's all about. The quadruple dry hopped Galaxy, Nelson, Mosaic Cryo Triple IPA from the wonderful Arpus in Eimuri, Ādāži, Latvia. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. So yeah. that does look pretty good. We'll leave a wee bit in the can so we can stir up the head again before we actually taste the thing. But yeah, you can see that this beer's poured exactly as you would expect from a kind of modern, hazy New England IPA. So we've got maybe about 80% of the beer out into the glass here. So you can see there's about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head there. It's mainly small bubbles, to be honest with you. So some kind of small foamy bubbles there. I'm not sure how well you're going to see that on the camera. I do need to get another stand so I can bring the beer in a little bit closer. But yeah, the head on this one looks quite good, but it is gradually just fading away, and I'm sure it will eventually reach the point of being just a very thin foamy layer. Now, colour-wise, this one is actually a very bright yellow, but I think just looking at the viewfinder, it looks a little bit darker to you guys, I think, than it actually is, but it is very much reminiscent of a sort of mango juice. And I always like comparing New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what they remind me of. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging or any adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour too, but you really don't have to care about that very often when it comes to IPAs. But yeah, for a triple IPA, I would say this is certainly not the soupiest and gloopiest of triples that I've come across, actually. It's got more of a kind of naturally hazy phenomenon going on with it. So the haze in these beers usually depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. But yeah, you can see if I put my hand behind the glass there, it does have a little bit of that. But like I say, certainly not the soupiest and gloopiest IPA that I've come across for a triple, or even a double or a single, to be quite honest with you. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation, one or two big bubbles sticking down the side of the glass and a few little ones going up toward the surface of the head there, and that head has just faded away a little bit more. But all in all, this is pretty much what you would expect appearance wise from any New England IPA or hazy beer, be it paleo IPA, double IPA, triple, quadruple, whatever. But it looks nice. So don't think we need to say any more about the aroma. This one, there's nothing surprising about the appearance of this one, sorry. We should move on and do the aroma section of this video. So let's do it. Oh, that's quite interesting. I'm going to say straight away, this is not the most pungent of hazy IPA aromas that I've come across. It's actually quite reserved, and the can will be pretty fresh actually. I know that these Arpus ones do make it out here quite fresh. I don't see a canned on date with this one, but it does say best before January 2025, so we're getting this one at the very start of March, and it's obviously been canned in January of 2024, so it's only about a month old, and that's fair enough for a beer that's come the distance that this one has. Absolutely fair enough. So maybe about 5-6 weeks old at this point in time. But yeah, certainly not the most pungent of aromas, I have to say that. But when it comes to your New England IPAs, I think there's 6 different things you should think about. So there's the kind of farmhousey, yeasty type character and the rye lean and grainy side of things. Those are a bit more common in American brewed New England IPAs, but you've got wheaty bitiness, barley malt bread, oaty creaminess, and also the sweeter side of things. Now this beer is quite interesting because I've got a feeling this one's got a bit more wheat in it, and it's got a bit more barley malt in it, and it's also got a wee touch of a almost farmhousey, yeasty character as well. The yeast that's been used in this is very, very familiar. I can smell maybe WLP 44 or something like that, or 66 rather. I think I've got the number mixed up there, but the yeast that's been used in this one is definitely one that I've come across before, and the main reason I can tell is because of the bread crusty and crackery sort of characters that I'm getting. There's just something very, very familiar about this. But yeah, let's break the aroma of this beer down and just describe it a bit more in depth. But when it comes to the New England IPAs, I would say this one is a bit more yeasty, a bit more wheaty, and a bit more barley malt leaning. I'm not getting too much oat, I'm getting very little sweetness out of it. So the backbone of this beer is a lovely sort of fresh white bready bread crust. There's a little touch of a kind of nutty sort of thing going on with this one, which is nice. So yeah, a little touch of nutty character coming out of the beer. Well, I don't know if nutty's the right word. Maybe more woody, actually. So I'm getting a wee bit of this just nutty, woody sort of thing, which is interesting. Yeah, more wood, definitely. So fresh, sort of white, brown bready bread crust. A little bit of this kind of nutty, woody, crackery sort of thing. Definitely some kind of wholemeal, more grainy, brown bready character. Definitely like fresher and slightly sweeter smelling white bread. In the back of the nose, I'm absolutely getting a little bit more of a kind of bitey, wheaty character out of it. And as I've often said, American wheat is quite smooth in comparison to European wheat, which is a bit drier and a bit more bitey. Maybe there's a wee bit of German Spelt or something like that in here, which is very old wheat variety. That wouldn't surprise me. So yeah, a little bit of that going on. If you sugar the beer up a wee bit more, you do get a little bit more of the oaty character out of it. And as I've often said, oaty character in New England IPAs is usually a good indicator of how fresh your IPAs are. Essentially, the creamier the oats are, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older it is. So yeah, there's a wee mix of things going on with this one. But yeah, I think the oats actually come across as being a little bit drier in this one, although there is a wee bit of that creaminess in there. I'm getting a little touch of that almost like Skittle type aroma that you can get, and that's one of the other giveaways with this yeast. It is I don't know if it's for sure if it's that WLP 66 or if it's it does remind me a little bit of the Apex beers from Sweden, right enough. Just the way the yeasty character goes together in this, so I would not be surprised if it's that WLP 66. But yeah, it has a wee bit of that kind of farmhousey note to it as well. But yeah, the oaty characters in there. There is a little hint of like Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch, but not too much. This beer really does remind me of those Apex Brewing Company beers from Örebro in Sweden. I've not had an Apex in a while, come to think of it. But yeah, the way this goes together on the malty side of things is quite nice. The more I smell of it, the more I get a wee touch of like a biscuity type thing. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of this beer. Let's focus on the hops. Now remember, with IPAs there are three kinds of hoppings that you can do. Early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That's going to give you mainly bitterness and a deeper, danker aroma. Late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly flavour and aroma and a kind of brighter sort of aroma when you're smelling it, and taste as well. And then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. And that is the yeah, that's definitely giving you all flavour and aroma and gives you a very bright green component in terms of aroma as well. New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, whereas West Coast IPAs use all three, hence why they have that deeper, danker aroma. So this beer is obviously using a lot of dry hopping and things. You've also got the cryo involved in there, and the green component is actually quite, you know, it's actually quite, you know, subtle in this one, if you like. It's actually not too kind of forthright and pungent. So for me, there's a little bit of earthiness to it, and that's most likely, I think, to come from the Mosaic in this one, even though it's the cryo version. There's a little touch of floral character in there, but for the most part, the green component for me is more of like a wet, freshly cut grass. That's what I'm getting on the green side of things with this beer. Now the fruity side is a lot more kind of as you would expect from these hops. But like I say, this beer, the more I smell of it, the more I get these kind of farmhousey, yeasty type notes out of it. It really does remind me of Apex in Sweden. But yeah, the fruity side of things is kind of what you would expect if you know these hops. So it's got a lovely kind of, it has got a lovely little bit of a kind of juicy passion fruity note to it. Big juicy mangoes as well, maybe a little touch of pineapple and apricot and things. That's the galaxy that's going to give you that big kind of tropical note to it. Yeah, and you can smell the more oily gooseberry, white green grapey characters, that's Nelson Sauvin. And then you get this lovely kind of juicy, bright, tangerine orange from the Mosaic in this one. And yeah, it's just, this is one of these beers. We know this hop combination fairly well. We have seen this many a time. You know, you can swap the Galaxy with the Citra and so on and do it that way. Sometimes you'll find Citra in as a fourth hop in these kind of beers. But yeah, it's quite familiar, this one. And that was one of the reasons why I picked this, because I wanted to try something stronger with a hop combination that I was quite familiar with. And yeah, that was just sitting there. So yeah, aroma wise, this has given you everything you would kind of expect if you know these hops and from the style, but definitely more along the lines of a slightly farmhousey, yeasty, almost kind of wheaty leaning New England IPA, this one. So it is really quite interesting, this beer. Quite a few things going on with it for sure. But let's pour the rest of it out into the glass. As I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, because that's always half the experience with craft beer. But yeah, this one is the quadruple dry hopped Galaxy Nelson Mosaic Cryo Triple IPA from Arpus in Eimuri, Adagi, near Riga in Latvia. My first kind of big strength IPA that I'm reviewing here on the channel from Arpus, if memory serves me correctly. Slanja, skål, cheers, or as they say in Latvia, prijeka. Here we go. Ooh. That is very, very nice. Yeah. Big, soft, juicy, creamy, New England hazy IPA, this one. And it does lean a little bit more toward that more kind of farmhousey type thing. In a sense, but yeah, it does remind me quite a little bit of some of the Apex Brewing Company beers that I've had previously, but I'm not surprised that Apex can do the heavy things like this, and to be honest with you, it's dangerously drinkable for being a 9.5%er. So that's another thing you have to give a thumbs up to Arpus for. These guys are really damn good at what they do. Their beers are always very smooth and very creamy and things like that. So yeah, this is great. Big thumbs up to them. Yeah, so where do we start with this one then? I'd say that overall, when I've taken this one in and had a look at and actually tasted the thing, this is one of these beers where the aroma diverges from, the aroma and flavour do diverge quite a little bit. It's not one of these beers that gives you everything you'd expect from the aroma, to be honest with you. And that happens, it does happen. It's not a criticism, but it comes along more often than you'd think with these beers. But yeah, this is, as I say, a lovely New England triple IPA, dangerously drinkable for its ABV. But let's start in the middle third of the palate then and describe the flavour of this one as we always do. So, the backbone of this beer, you get a lovely, kind of fresh, white bready bread crust there. That forms the backbone of the beer. As you move further forward, you do get a little hint of like a Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing, just that lighter crackery note. And above that, you get this kind of, there's a very slight woodiness in there as well. But yeah, above the bread crust, you've got this really quite sweet, almost like buttery, brown bready layer that just kind of sits there. And I think that really goes together very nicely in this beer. So above the bread crust, a little bit of wood, a little bit of cracker, but then yeah, this kind of sweeter, brown bready layer coming out of it too. So yeah, sweeter, brown bready character in there. Above that, you start to get the white bready layer as well, which again has a wee bit of sweetness to it. And then above that, you can taste that slightly more dense kind of wheaty character coming out of the beer. Now, the wheaty character in this beer does give you a little bit of bitiness and dryness and stuff the further into the aftertaste that you go. Particularly, you get a little bit more bitiness on the back of that middle third of your tongue. But then above all of that, you start to get the oaty side of this beer. And the oaty side of this one is really nice and really creamy. Like I say, this beer is about 6 weeks old, so it's not its absolute prime, if you like. You know, that's probably around the kind of 3-4 week mark, but it's still in very, very good condition, and it's held up very, very well on its journey over here to Asia. So cannot complain at all. But yeah, if you go down the middle line of your palate, you get that big creamy oaty character, and as you move out, this sits on top of the wheaty layer like I said, but as you move out toward the extremities of your palate, you will get a wee bit more of a kind of drier, you get a wee bit more of that kind of dryness out of the oats. And on the dry side of the oaty character, that's when you start to get a few wee elements of that almost like skittle like sweetness that you can get from some of these New Englands. That's a little bit of the yeast in the middle coming out there. So yeah, that's definitely quite interesting with this one. You do get more and more of that almost skittle-like sweetness lingering into the aftertaste. But if you go to the absolute dead centre, the absolute epicentre of the middle of your palate there, you do get that little intense circle where it's the Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type character, and that is of course the booze of the beer that's giving you these kind of brown sugary type flavours. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think is really, really very nice. So that gets a big thumbs up from me. The malty side of this beer, it's interesting because I was expecting something to be a lot more kind of farmhousey and stuff, but really it's actually quite sweet and bready and things, and then, yeah, I quite like that. So yeah, I think that covers everything we need to say about the malty side of the beer, the middle third of the palate. So back third of the palate then, as I often say, you get similar flavours on the back third of the palate as you do in the middle third of the palate, just a bit drier and things. On the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of the bready build-up, brown bread on the base, white bread on the top. On the base of that back third of the palate, you've got the fresh kind of white bready bread crust in there. It does of course feel a little bit drier. You've got a wee bit of a kind of dry crackery layer. You've got the brown bready layer sitting above that, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy, still a little bit of sweetness to it though. And then above that, you've got the white bready layer, which feels lighter and more airy and still a wee bit of sweetness to that. You can feel a little bit of the kind of wheaty character just creeping over the top of that. Because you're further back on the palate, it has a wee bit more bitiness, and some of the drier sides of the oats are just kind of creeping over the top of that too, which is quite interesting. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think is really nice. And then above all of that, you've got the yeasty side of the beer. So the yeasty side of this beer, you have this really kind of sweet, doughy, brown bready epicenter. And around that, you've got a more fluffy and still quite sweet white bread, and then just a wee bit of a crusty character around the edge of that. But definitely the yeasty side of this beer, sits above everything else on that back third of the palate. And yeah, the way everything goes together on that, in that sense, is very nice. So definitely back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour. It is taller, and as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more, which is really nice actually. So that's the malty and yeasty side of this beer covered very nicely. So yeah, big thumbs up to the malty yeasty side of things. Let's go on to the hoppy side of the beer then. So the green component is kind of what you'd expect. Because of the presence of the cryo, it's actually very, very smooth. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate, you've got that wee bit of earthiness in there. But as you move further forward, you get a little touch of herbal character, but very, very quickly, it becomes a little bit more sort of floral and aromatic, but still very smooth. You do get a wee bit of that floral prickle there, but round the front curve of your tongue, the beer is definitely a wee bit lighter and more grassy rather than anything else. So you get a wee bit of a more lighter grassiness to it, which is nice. So, wee bit of zestiness too, pardon me, which is quite interesting. And a lot of these characteristics, as I say, are going to come from the cryo. But yeah, very soft green component. Let's look at the front third of your palate then and the fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a good little bit of bready build up in there, the brown bread on the base and the white bread on top. But then the base of that front third of your palate, you get the bread crust underneath, the sweeter brown bread, the white bread, maybe a little bit of the more dense wheat, but then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at that. Let's have a wee look at that fruity side of things. So yeah, the fruity side of things in this beer, it's absolutely what you'd expect from these hops. If you go to the back, I will say it's very soft and juicy for the most part, but if you go to the back of that front third of your palate, you've got a little touch of grapefruit in there, which can very often come from Galaxy, and that lingers there into the aftertaste. But as you move further forward, you get a very ripe, very juicy passion fruit. And then yeah, as you move further forward from that, big juicy mangoes, and maybe just a wee touch of like pineapple and stuff as well, maybe a little bit of apricot underneath it. So yeah, the back half of that front third of your palate is all about the tropical side of things. But yeah, when you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, you've got the oily kind of gooseberry, white, green, grapey sort of things from the Nelson Sauvin, and then the really juicy, bright tangerines from the Mosaic just sit on top of that. It's absolutely lovely. I really do like how all of this pieces together in this one, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, awesome stuff. I really do like how that pieces together in this one. Yeah, it's the fruity side of this beer is lovely. As I say, this is just not quite what I expected from the aroma. It's a really soft, juicy, and kind of more kind of dry, creamy sort of New England IPA, this one. But great stuff from Arpus once again. I'm not surprised. I'm just surprised at how close it is to some of these Apex Brewing Company beers that I had from Örebro in Sweden for all those years. But yeah, this is the first IP I've had from Arpus in a long time, actually, come to think of it. But still, very, very good. So, I think that's that. I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this beer. Let's round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So, pardon me. For me, getting a wee bit of gas off it. For me, mouthfeel wise, this beer is kind of top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a lovely, really soft mouthfeel to it, quite wet and juicy, but at the same time it's got a good little bit of creaminess to it. The IBU in this beer is quite minimal, to be honest with you. I'm really not getting all that much bitterness out of it at all. I think it's about 20 IBUs or something like that, if that. It really feels as if it's almost like Hefeweizen level bitterness, which I know is 15. So yeah, the IBU count in this beer is just absolutely minimal, and I think that's potentially due to the presence of cryo and obviously heavy late addition and the dry hopping. It's quadruple dry hopped. So yeah, the bitterness in this beer strikes me as being quite minimal. 50 IBUs, maybe 20 at most. But the malt base, as we said, it's a wee bit of dryness underneath, a bit of smoothness in the middle, slight sweetness in there as well, then a more kind of slightly creamy character on top and a wee bit of sweetness from the booziness of the beer. The green component is very smooth and very kind of wet, and you've got a lovely juicy fruitiness to this one. Lots and lots of tropical fruit and a wee bit of a more kind of zesty orangey sort of thing. So yeah, the way that everything pieces together in this beer is really very, very nice, and I can see why a lot of people rave about these Arpus New England IPAs. This is great. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Ārpus Brewing Company as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But yeah, pardon me, this one was the quadruple dry hopped Galaxy Nelson Mosaic Cryo Triple IPA. Beautiful, beautiful beer, really soft, creamy, juicy, and slightly kind of farmhousey, yeasty sort of thing. So yeah, awesome stuff. Until the next time, Slancha, Skål, cheers, Prieka, and try some Arpus beers. Ciao just now.